Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Untitled Reviews. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Kung Fu. A great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Obviously, there was a lot of serious elements to this episode, but I also like that this episode was very endearing and a lot of fun. Breaking it down, I love that we had the whole Clementine storyline, and I love the moment Dennis left the car running and went inside. I was like, you were inside for 5 seconds. That's all it took to get the car stolen, and immediately the car gets stolen. I'm like, I knew it. I was like, oh, Dennis. Because you could tell immediately how much this car means to Althea, because she's like, oh, you want to take Clementine? And he's like, yeah. And she's like, yeah, just, okay, but this and that, just take care of it. He's like, I get it. I swear I'll take care of your baby. And so it's like she cares a lot for this, and I love that he turned to the only people he can turn to, Nikki and Henry. It's like, please, I need your help. Please, Althea can't know that I let Clementine get stolen because that's her baby. It's like, that's the love of her life. Even Nikki was like, I'm sorry. And Dennis was like, it's almost like, it sucks to kind of hear, but also, I get it. I know how important this car is to her. I even love the story about how she would scare people away when she found Clementine, but they didn't have the money to get it. So she ended up like scaring away anyone that came close sniffing around Clementine, which I'm like, what exact ways did you go about? Because the way Nikki phrased it, it's like, oh, she haunted the dealership. So it's like probably made it seem like something spooky and scary would happen to scare people away. I wish we could have got more details about exactly what she did, but to know that Althea has, it just kind of, it adds more just cuteness to her character. The fact is that she went above and beyond for that car. I mean, I'm not a car person, but maybe I've never found that car that clicked with me. She found one, and it's been her prized possession, especially with everything that's going on, starting up her company. Things are a little bumpy, awkward. She doesn't know how to really lead, like be a boss, and because this is our first time, like, because it's all on her, because she's like, her employees, like her partner, not even her employees, her employees, but they're her partners in all of this. Also, like, give her some ideas about how they should handle things, and she doesn't know how to really handle that. So things are kind of, off to a rocky start work-wise. Then if she finds out that Clementine, which has been her lucky charm, which anytime I hear the name Clementine, I immediately, second thing that comes to my mind is Clementine from, God, what was it? Hemlock Grove on Netflix. But first and foremost, it's Clementine from Telltale's Walking Dead. That came first and foremost, but regardless. So Dennis wants to get the car back before Althea can find out, and Nikki's like, fine, I don't feel right lying to my sister, but you will have to tell her by the end of the day. He's like, okay. So it turns out, and I love that Dennis feels so bad when they go to Evan for help, and it turns out this is a car thieving ring that's kind of hit a lot of places, in particular low income places like China, like some and also like hitting places like Chinatown. Like a family known as the Yangs, they ended up having their van stolen, and the van is a part of their delivery service, so it's having a major impact on their business. So, and that's sad because like we've already seen it, like so many business and other families. That's why Jin's helping out Frank, is like so many businesses are suffering in Chinatown. So, and also, like, it's like, oh, so Dennis, what did you do? He's like, I was circling looking for a parking spot for 15 minutes. And it's like, and you left the keys in ignition and the engine running. He just kind of looks down. So they use Ryan's car to draw out a thief. We never actually found out who actually stole Clementine in the first place, because I guess in the grand scheme of things, it kind of doesn't matter. It's because they run into Brittany, who's trying to steal Ryan's car, which was supposed to be like the bait car. But it turns out it's a one-time gig. You basically show up, steal a car, you get paid for it. So we'll never find out who actually stole Clementine in the first place. I guess it kind of doesn't matter. But these are people who are desperate, like Brittany. She's like, me and my dad were 2 months behind on rent. I just needed the money. I'm sorry. And they let her go in the end, because I think at the end of the day, it's like, no crime was actually committed. She attempted a crime. You still go to jail for that. Like, just because you successfully didn't steal something, but they kind of stopped her before she actually committed the crime. So luckily it was them and not the police. And even Dennis ended up wiring her the money, seeing how desperate she was. Sadly, that ended up backfiring her a little bit, because it turns out the money he pulled came from their joint account. So Althea shows up the moment they're getting a clue about where to find Clementine, and Althea's like, oh, what's this about Clementine? Oh, honey, why are you here? It's like, oh, because you were supposed to be out for a short errand. I didn't know if you were dead or not, so you've been ghosting me the entire day. Then you add on to the fact is that suddenly you draw money out of my account. Plus, I'm spiraling a little bit at work to the point I'm hiding away from my employees in the bathroom. So what's this about Clementine? And he's almost got that look like, honey, baby, sweetheart, love of my life. Which is so sad because Nikki was like, tell Althea. Ryan was like, no, if you start typing, those 3 dots are going to appear and you're going to have no choice but to commit, because if you start typing and then don't, that's going to be a red flag in itself. There were just so many red flags already, but poor Dennis. And he's kind of in the doghouse a little bit with Althea. And he's almost kind of like, see, everything's kind of working out. And she's kind of like giving him that look like, don't even try me. So it turns out they were able to track down, because basically it's a place where they steal cars and basically people get an opportunity to blow it up. It's like, oh, you want to shoot it full of holes? You want to shoot it with a bazooka? Apparently this is kind of becoming a more rapid thing. I guess it's like, right, if you've got enough money and clout, you can just do this type of stuff. It kind of lets you do like some extreme stuff without going too off the wall out there. So Nikki, Althea, and Dennis sneak in. I love that the person behind all this, his name is Leaf. He was actually working on an app back in the day, but it failed, so he kind of leaned back into his criminal roots. Interestingly enough, the actor who plays Leaf is... I'm going to butcher his last name, but Richard Speaked. I don't know if I've ever heard his name actually said out loud. I know I butchered that, but he, CW connection-wise, he played Gabriel on Supernatural. I was like, it's Gabriel! I love it. I even love that he brought, like, kind of, like, his character has a little, like, levity to it a little bit in this episode, too, because of the whole later on when, like, Dennis and Althea had their heart-to-heart moment. You could see him on the roof of the car being pinned down by Nikki being like, oh, like, he has this look on his face like, that's sweet. And then he kind of gets the thumbs up, too, and I'm like, I love it so much. But, yeah. You also got to give it to those, the private security he hired. They're actually decent people. He was like, all right, I need you guys to kill them and bury their bodies. And they were like, we're private security. We're not going to kill these people. I'm like, good on you. Most goons would be like, oh, we're hired to do this. All right, let's do it. Shows that these people you're decent security people, because it's like, right, we're here to protect the event. We're not going to be murderers for you. I'm like, he's like, that's what money's for. That's why I pay you. I'm like, I love that, because the cliche thing would be like, all right, whatever you say, boss, you want us to kill him, even though we're private security, we'll do that for you. I find that so fascinating. I love that because Althea and Dennis aren't used to it. They didn't keep their story straight, which Leaf's significant other kind of was almost like, oh, wait, didn't you tell Leaf that you did this? He was like, yes, that's what I used to do. And they were able to cover their tracks until someone who recognized Dennis. And then the guy was like, hey, Dennis, I didn't know you were into this. And he's like, I don't know that guy. And the guy's like, whoa, come on, Dennis. That's code, bro. I love that so much. It's like, yeah, it all came falling down because they're not used. They should have kept their story straight, but they didn't. But that was also like they almost recovered until that X Factor screwed things up. So it, goes and leads into a whole chase sequence, which I love it. And it's like, all right, I need to stop him before he gets to the freeway. Althea, I need your permission. She's like, wait, no. It's like, yes, I'm going to have to. It's like, oh, okay, just a tap. All right, Althea, close your eyes. And yeah, I just see her close her eyes. Luckily, it was but also, Leaf kept being like, back away. And I was like, are we going to find out he's actually an undercover cop or something? Like, I was like, why is he telling her back away? I don't get it. Turns out there was explosives, because that's how they were going to destroy Clementine, was just going to blow it up. So there were explosives already back there. It's like, oh, cool. Nikki could have kind of killed all of them in the process. But it's like, because Althea was kind of pissed with Dennis, and now he's like, I'm sorry, like, this is all my fault. Because you could tell, like, she was pissed, but she'd even said, like, it's not even about Clementine. I was like, what was it about then? And she opens up about the fact is, what bothered her the most is that you couldn't bring yourself to, like, you didn't trust me enough to, like, tell me, like, that you were so afraid to actually tell me the truth. And for her, like, that's what bothered her the most. Like, we're in this marriage together, like, honesty. Like, yeah, I would have been upset about the Clementine thing, but I would have at least wanted to hear it from you directly. I wish you had told me the truth. Like, why couldn't you? And he says, because then you would have found out. And she's like, found out what? That I'm not good enough for you. And she's like, have how long have you been feeling like? He's like, since forever. And I didn't know they went that far back. Maybe that came up in season 1. I didn't remember that they've known each other since high school. He was like, yeah, I was like the dorky, lanky kid, and you've always been this beautiful, amazing, like smart, passionate queen. And it's like, you always said hi to me, but that's just because I'm sure that was just you being nice. Which I get that, dude. Oh my God, like it's like, I think everyone's been through that. There's plenty of times, like, there's girls I've crushed on majorly in high school, and it's like, oh, I'm sure you just waved, but it's like, I won't go into my high school crushes, but it's like, yeah, there's one girl in particular, I remember, like, I had the biggest crush on her, and it's like, anytime she smiled and waved at me, I was like, I felt what Dennis felt. It's like, dude, it lit up my world. I was like, oh my God, this is the coolest thing ever. I looked forward to that, because she kind of did it daily, and I was like, and we were friendly enough, like we talked from time to time. I think we consider each other friends, but it was just like, I just thought like, oh my God, she's so pretty, and oh my God, yeah. So I get that. So I was like, I resonated with that. And Dennis is like, yeah, but it was Archie like really endearing that he was thinking like, right, he was never going to be good enough for her. And even Althea's like, if you had asked me out back then, like, because she knows who he is, like I would have dated you back then too, you know. Because he's like, yeah, because she's like, you're not perfect. You're never going to be perfect. You leave the toilet seat down, but you still pee on it. And do you really have to go to D&D? I love that about you, your D&D obsession. I was like, right, I forgot that was a big discovery last season, about Dennis. But it's like, yeah, but every Saturday? So she's like, you're never going to be perfect, and neither am I, and that's okay. And it's like how we complement each other. It's us being together, being open. That's what a relationship is about, like being together and making each other stronger. I was like, oh, it's such a beautiful, heartwarming moment between them. Because I also think like Althea also understands that to some extent too, because I think for a while she kind of felt like she kind of wasn't good enough for Dennis. That was also because like stuff with his mom made her feel that way. So, but I think out of anyone, she could also understand that. So it's like, but that's like, it's silly for you to think like that, you know? And they're having this beautiful moment. I'm like, oh, I was like, in the back of my mind, I was like, please don't let that car, and boom, as I'm thinking that, the car blows up. I was like, no, after everything, Clementine's gone. And it's just like, Althea's just standing there, and she bursts into tears. She's like, no, I'm so sorry, Althea. It didn't work out. Oh man, that sucks so much, dude. That sucks. That's heartbreaking. So, but at the end of the day, this whole conversation with Dennis did inspire her to go back to work, and she is very open with them. It's like, right, we help each other grow. Like, and I'm a newbie at this, so I'm going to need your guys to kind of, you're going to see me fail and stumble, but that's okay. And it's going to be out in the open, but that's why we're here. We're in this together. We're partners. We're going to all like make each other better. We compensate where others might be lacking. So just bear with me as I'm kind of stumbling through this myself. So it is, in the long run, this did help Althea grow, and obviously it helped their relationship too, their first fight, especially because Nikki and Henry had theirs, because Nikki kept pushing the whole, like, oh, you should talk to your dad thing, because this is the first time it's come up. We know it came up last episode, like his dad contacted him, and he was like, oh, it's nothing. And because Nikki's coming from the perspective of she ran away from her family and she was able to repair things, but Henry was like, wait, you think I haven't tried? He's just like, let it go. And they were just kind of awkward around each other, didn't really know how to approach the situation. But listening to her advice, he actually went to go see his dad, who, interestingly enough, his dad is played by an actor named Terry Chin. I didn't know Terry's name until I just had to Google it. Because the thing I knew him from most recently in my head was Jessica Jones. That was like the most recent thing in my head that I could remember him from. Because I forgot he was apparently in the pilot episode of Big Sky. I'm not caught up with a million little things. It was like, I think the most recent thing he had worked on. I'd skim through some of his filmography, and I was like, oh man, he's in a lot of things, because I completely forgot about him being in Van Helsing too in retrospect. But regardless, tangents and all that aside, that actor is playing his dad. And it seems like his dad's got a girlfriend. I didn't know if that was going to rub Henry the wrong way. Because we didn't really get into what a lot of Henry's issues with his dad was. But it seems like his dad kind of up and left. Him, his mom, and just... Cause I don't know if Henry's mom... I guess his mom might not be alive anymore. Or maybe she is. I don't remember if that's really... that's the thing. Like, I don't remember how much of that really ever got brought up in season 1 or not. But... his dad like emptied the safety deposit box and was like, oh yeah, I've got your birth certificate and your social security card if you want to stop by to get it. It was like it was an excuse to set up a meeting so that Henry would stop by. And so he also asked for like his grandmother's ring, and it's like, what you want to do with your grandmother's like engagement ring? And you're like, yo! And he hasn't decided yet, but he does believe that Nikki is the one. And he's like, and his dad's like, yeah, like the fact is that about how him and Henry's mom first met. It was the 5 best years of his life with them being married. And then at first, the way Henry was looking at the ring, at first I was like, is the ring not actually the ring? Like, are you going to say, like, he swapped it out for a fake just because he sold it because, like, he's that desperate for money or something? I was wondering if that's what Henry was going to lead to, but it turns out that's not the case. I think he just... Ultimately, he's like, when I do eventually propose to Nikki, it's going to be a ring I bring, because I'm not going to use a ring that has any ties to you, because his dad had the audacity to be like, oh, it's a good thing you're waiting. I mean, he's like, I don't want you to be, like, chained down. He's like, oh, you mean, like, you who abandoned me and mom left me to be raised by your grandma. So that's why it seems like implying, like, his mom did die when he was still fairly young. And then his grandmother, which I'm assuming it's got to be his mom, Henry's dad's mom, is the one who raised him. So for that to be the case, it seems like his mom wasn't in his life, so she probably passed away. And it was like, wow. So you can understand why it's like, yeah, you kind of abandoned me. Like, and I guess over the years, his dad's tried to pop back into his life, but it's like, oh, you think I'm just going to forget you abandoning me and mom? And, like, grandma was the one that ended up having to take care of me? Like, shut up. Like, overall, the way he walks away from it when he's talking to Nikki later is saying, like, right, it all worked out. But the question is, it came out positive, I guess, to some extent, but I am curious. Was he just... Because it wasn't all good. Obviously, he wasn't going to talk about all the stuff between him and his dad. Well, because he made it seem like, right, my dad is my past, you are my future. So it was more so it was good because it made him realize, like, right, I made the right choice, not really contacting my dad. I got the closure and reassurance I need that he is in the past. Him and I want nothing to really do with him. He'll be my dad, but that's about it. I want to look to the future, not dwell on the past. So I think that's all Henry really took from it, because I'm about to say the whole, it was good to some extent, but it kind of ended in a very sour sense. But I think Henry didn't want to sour the mood with that. So, and obviously avoiding other aspects of that conversation about how, he went to... Because that was probably the main reason why he went to go see his dad, out of curiosity and because he wanted to, but also because of the ring situation. So, but what was an interesting twist is when we find out his girlfriend isn't all that great, because it turns out they're mixed up in something, which you can only go like, okay, so is that a Tan situation? Because they're trying to get rid of Nikki, and obviously she's kind of a thorn in Russell Tan's side as well. So, like, I'd assume, like, there's some correlation there, or maybe they just know Nikki's reputation of, like, we need Henry brought into the fold. Like, that's why he was, like, subtly being like, oh, maybe you shouldn't marry her. Maybe she isn't the one, because they need, whatever it is, they want Henry into the fold, and because Henry has his, like, darker past, but he's pulled away from that, so maybe his family's trying to drag him back in. Like, I don't know whether it's an organized crime thing that's related to Russell Tan, or it's a separate thing entirely, but... that was kind of interesting. So whatever it is, it's like, right, we've got a mission. I'm like, what is that about? Maybe it's not even about the criminal stuff. Maybe it has something to do with, like, Henry's lineage. Much like Nikki's got her destiny, maybe Henry's got his. And maybe that's what that folds into, of, like, they've got some, like, higher power mission or something that they're embarking on. We'll ultimately have to wait and see where that takes us going forward. Another element to this episode is, while Evan's doing everything he can help out Nikki and them with the whole Clementine thing, turns out he's got some issues of his own when Juliet Tan shows up. It's like, oh, I need your guys' help. Someone, I think there's my father's, he's inconsolable right now just because of the stress of someone breaking into our house, yada, yada, blah, blah, blah. So Evan has to try and cover for Nikki, especially because his boss ended up putting him in the forefront of the operation into looking in this. Now, from the very beginning, I was like, Evan probably thought it was a little suspicious, but he probably didn't think too much of it. He's just like, right, my boss, he knows his boss has ties to the Tan, so that's what they're doing, trying to figure out who came in and melted the bell. they've already got their contingency plan, but they're trying. In the long run, we find out the whole thing was a trap. I figured something was off because they specifically asked for Evan, and we know that Nikki, looking into it, Russell has all this information on Mia and Nikki. Granted, it was for the Bell-related stuff because he was looking for a sacrifice needed to activate the Bell's power and stuff. Sure, because he was looking for, like, because he was trying to find Guardians and seeing if, like, the Warrior bloodline or the Guardians would be enough to activate the Bell. Obviously, once again, he needed someone born from both bloodlines. But the fact is, he's got all this info on Nikki, means she's got info on everyone in her circle, which includes Evan, who was her ex, and she still visits from time to time. So of course they have an eye on Evan. So that's why I kind of felt like this was off from the very beginning. I was like, it ended up being a trap because the moment Evan, I was like, please don't delete that footage, Evan, because I think you're being set up. My thought was, it kind of ended up being a case, but it wasn't what I thought it was. It was kind of parallel thinking to what happened. My thought was that Evan was going to end up deleting it, but it turns out his boss has a copy, and she's like, cool, I'm going to go through like, Evan was like, yeah, I'm still looking through the footage, and she's like, don't worry, I'm going to look through it myself. It's like, wait, what? Yeah, I have a copy of it, and he'd have to try and sneak in and get rid of her copy. That's what I was thinking, which ended up kind of being the case, but it was more so she made copies because she wanted to see whether or not Evan could be trusted. And it's like, right, you should have just done your job. And it's like, how deep are you in with the Tans? And she's like, cool, it's time for you to resign. Like, the whole thing was a trap set up to give her an excuse to fire him because they knew that Nikki would have access to someone. So this makes things harder going forward because now they won't have Evan as a resource to help out. Obviously, they still have an insider to a certain extent. The person, I'm blanking on her name right now, the woman that he's working with into investigating all this, she's still on the inside, so they still have that leg up. But, you know, she's also got to be careful too because, or at the very least, they think they've got, because even Juliet later on is talking to her dad. It's like, right, we got rid of that other thorn in our side because that was an insider who was, I mean, he was already looking into Russell on his own, but now Nikki also, well, that's one less person looking into you. Two, that's also a person that's, one less ally that Nikki has with those type of access and resource. So, but Juliet's like, right, just like we thought, she's going to look for her dad, which I'm wondering, the way she implied it almost sounded like they got that information from someone, which I'm like, do they have an insider in all of this? I don't know, but yeah. So they're trying to track down her dad because luckily Ryan got access to her records because Mei Lee ended up talking to her mom, and it's like, okay, so Mei, she contacted me 20 years ago, said she loved me, and hung up. And her mom tracked it back to a hospital that's about 20 years ago, so that could have been where she had Mia. So they ultimately end up getting, Ryan got access to the medical records. No dad on the birth certificate, but she has a very rare blood situation, so they were able to trace it back in, looking it up in Russell's computers and stuff. That they ended up, with Althea's help, unlocking this episode. So now they have an idea of who her dad is. They just have to track him down, because tracking him down means tracking down Mia, which both sides are rushing to it, because now they know, like, okay, they already have the access to that and know, right, Mia is most like we guess she's going to see her dad, so both sides are rushing to her. So we'll see ultimately who gets to her first, because even if one side gets to her first, who's to say the other won't still get there in time to snatch her away. So hopefully, you know, everything works out. But looks like the Tans are on the winning side currently. There is still also the stipulation. I almost let it slip my mind. Let's not forget that Kerwin pointed Jilan in the way of Mia. So that's actually 3 people on their way. Well, she might. Well, I don't know if Kerwin pointed her in the right direction. Like, I guess Jilan has her resources. I'm sure that's dwindled since her incarceration, but I'm assuming she's going to find her way to Mia, not unless she's keeping an eye on, like, Henry and Nikki and using that as but she doesn't know the connection between them, so not unless she's just keeping an eye on Russell Tan and then trying to get to Mia before him. We'll ultimately have to wait and see how that plays out. But I'm excited to see where the next episode takes us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.